Hi, class. This week we're talking about the transition stage of group. Welcome to. We're almost done. We're on our way here. We're almost done. I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about this chapter 7. And so in this phase of group, we're out of the initial phase. We're in the transition phase, and so sometimes there can be an unwillingness to disclose. And this is when we're trying to get people to buy in, so that. So that we can dive deeper, right? We're out of just the beginning, getting to know you, understanding what we're talking about, all those kinds of things, and we're trying to transition into more in-depth information. So there can be different problematic behavior that comes up. There can be more defensiveness, more anxiety, because I think things are kind of getting a little deeper. This is when people might feel more threatened in regards to their vulnerability. They might test the leader, other members, struggle between wanting to play it safe and risk getting involved. Observe the leader to determine their trustworthiness, learn how to express themselves so others will listen, which we all know some people don't express themselves in super helpful ways. And can then create defensiveness, right? And so we want to try to gauge where we're at with trust. They use the word here, barometer, right? Like the weather tool. But what's going on here in the group? So people who tend to be showing up late, leaving early, miss sessions, that could be a sign that something's going on. They're reluctant to participate, and they're not willing to really face their fears. Maybe they're not willing to initiate personal, meaningful work, deny that they have problems or concerns, hide behind global statements and intellectualizations. So they might say really profound, deep things, but really don't mean anything. Sometimes people, maybe people like this, but use really big words to sound really bright or really smart or to kind of throw people off. And you're like, you're actually not making any sense at all. This is stuff that happens. Being unwilling to deal with conflict in the group. They just don't want to face things. Because again, we're getting below the surface now, right? We were in the surface, we were in the like, oh, this is fun. I really want to work on this, but now we're getting to the work and it's like, oh, do I actually really want to work on this? Do I actually really want to face these things? Do I actually want to change or confront something that's hard? A lot of times, no. People are afraid of making a fool of themselves. They struggle with, emptiness, losing control, being too emotional. That's a really hard one. I have a lot of times clients really try to avoid emotion. They're fearful of emotion. They don't want to cry. They don't want to do those things. So, they want to hold it in. They want to contain. They don't want to be judged, singled out, or rejected. That's those are legitimate fears, but again, we're not going to grow if we don't try to change some of those patterns, right? So again, we want to make sure that we're creating an environment where people want to do those things, but that's going to be a challenge, right? And so these are when we're going to see some of these challenges is in this phase. So, when we do need to confront something that's going on in the group, we want to make sure we're mindful on how we're doing that. We want to make sure we're modeling good confrontation. You want to be modeling I statements, taking responsibility for your own feelings, or the person needs to be taking responsibility for their own feelings. This can be modeled in the group, which is helpful by the leader, or you can, as a leader, can help them model this with each other and say, no, actually, don't say it that way, say it this way. There could be some coaching that goes on. I think that's helpful because a lot of people don't know how to confront well. A lot of people would rather not confront, right? Like that's a lot of our society, our culture is to not actually deal with things, not actually confront things. And so I think to be able to help people see these things is good, and then be like, let's deal with it. Let's move on. Let's be okay with one another. Let's forgive. That's modeling something that maybe doesn't even happen in their own personal life, which can be very huge and helpful, So just things to be aware of, okay? People who make it difficult for you as a leader, there's gonna be with those people. So, these people might be sarcastic. They might be picking at people, right? Trying to maybe expose others, or they're being just hard on you, like they're making your job harder. And so, trying to realize like these people aren't against you. It might feel very personal, but hey, they're all people who are struggling. We never know who we might remind somebody of, or any of those things. So just trying to be mindful of like, this isn't about me, this is about the group and the health of the group. So I need to be willing to deal with this situation, even though it's hard, even though it's frustrating, even though this could pose maybe a problem, and or maybe this person won't be able to handle it and they'll decide not to come anymore, which that's not the goal. But trying to realize like I can't be afraid to confront people, because one, then we're letting someone control the group, which is not going to help with group cohesiveness. It's not going to help with group openness, vulnerability. It's not going to build trust. And so if we're willing to confront it and there's change, and then that might even help other people to confront that person too, to allow them to know like, hey, you don't got to be this way, which sometimes people are that way because they're just super defensive, so just some things to be mindful of. So problematic ways people could behave: silence, taking over, storytelling, questioning, giving advice, dependency, hostile behavior, acting like they're better than everyone else, trying to over intellectualize. They think that they're a co-leader because they're so knowledgeable, or whatever that might be. Just, just difficult things where you're like, you're really making this a problem, not only for me, but for a lot of other people. We want to be encouraging as leaders, members to say more rather than stopping at the point of initial resistance. You want to work with the challenging person, but also not be afraid to back down from the challenges, right? We got to be willing to face them. Now, some people, their issue is going to be avoiding it. Someone gave the example to me. It's like some people, this was the metaphor that they gave me, are like a house and their kitchen may be on fire and they just choose to shut the door and pretend like nothing's happening. And I think a lot of people deal with life's hardships with avoidance. And they all may have kitchens on fire and they just shut doors. And then when the fire moves to another room, they just shut that door. Before they know it, they're very limited on doors and options. So address the avoidance, bring it to the surface, don't give up, not indulge in feelings of frustration and annoyance, all things that are very important. And I think we got to remember too, like we might have people in the group that trigger us in a type of way. So if you're still under supervision, making sure that you're talking to your supervisor about that, talking with your co-leader about that. We don't want to ignore those problems. And we want to talk through them. And there might be transference with like members of the group with other members or things of those nature. So we just have to talk through those things. Basically, a lot of this is not being worried or afraid to deal with confrontation on all levels, right? And deal with conflict in a healthy way, which is so good for a group to be able to model that and to see that and to experience that. It's really, really good. So sometimes with the co-leader, somebody may like one leader and not the other. They might challenge both leaders. Dealing with problems and behavior, and dealing with countertransference. The co-leader could have countertransference. Sometimes you may not get along with your co-leader, which could be a problem. And we have to be mindful of, this is for the sake of the group. This isn't for anybody else. And so being on the same page is important. So, you just want to make sure you have a co-leader, if you have control over it, that you get along with, work well with, isn't going to set the group members can't, manipulate and set you up against each other. Just all important things to be mindful of. So, transition stage: recognize and express persistent reactions, respect their own defensiveness, move from dependence to independence, and learn how to confront others in a constructive manner and work through conflicts rather than remain silent. Okay. Those are all positive aspects. And how we function is we teach members to value, to deal with conflict, assist members in recognizing their own defensive patterns, teach members to expect anxiety and defensive behaviors and to work constructively with attempts at self-protection. So we don't want them to be attacking, but like acknowledge, like I acknowledge this is going on. How do we handle it? we want to deal with things tactfully and challenge, but I don't think to be challenged is always bad. It's not like we're trying to be critical. We're just trying to be like, we want to challenge people to think outside the box, right? Because again, like this is going to help them even outside of the group. And that's important to remember. This isn't just about this one circumstance. This is about their life and how they live outside of just these moments. And so the initial phase is real. I mean, I'm sorry, the transitional phase is really pivotal in the growth and the development of the group. So I hope you guys are hanging in there. We're almost done, nearing the end. Any questions or concerns, just reach out to me.